Hey, this is Bree, and I'd like to welcome you to myhdcareer.com. Today, we are going to talk about what to do with our nerves when we are in the midst of an interview. And we're going to focus on this concept called grounding, which allows us to be able to disperse our energy, particularly our anxious energy, into other places other than us fidgeting and doing weird stuff in the middle of an interview. When I'm working with clients, there's oftentimes this discussion about having a lot of nerves in the middle of the interview, maybe when there's questions that are being asked, and oftentimes it has to do with like the hands, like where do I put my hands? And so today I'm going to talk to you about a couple of grounding techniques that help you calm your nerves in that moment so that you can be effective in your interview while in front of your interviewers. So first, I want you to focus on being able to pay attention to where everything's at. The first step is figuring out somewhere to put your elbows so that, oops, I slid. So getting your elbows to a place for it to land. And then put your hands in this kind of position. So what's great about this is that if you have your elbows anchored, this automatically puts you in a position to be able to get your hips anchored into the seat and then your feet square on the ground. Now that you have 3 points of contact that kind of puts you up in an interested position, leaning forward the interview panel so that you can be present right there in that moment. The next thing you want to worry about is where do your hands go? Do your hands go on your lap? Do they go on the table? Well, I want to give your hands something to do. And so the way we're going to do that is what I do is take a pen with me to the interview, particularly one that doesn't have any clicky things or things that you can mess with in the middle of it. But instead you're going to take this pen and you're going to put your thumb on the end of the pen so that you don't ink yourself. And then the second part is you're going to take your other hand, your non-writing hand, and you're going to clasp it over the top of that pen. And so what happens is now you have this thing that's in your hands that gives your hands something to do, that you can kindly disguise any sort of small fidgety movements that you need to make to be able to disperse some of that energy. The other part of this is once your elbows are in a chair, hopefully that has arms, it looks like this. And so now I'm leaning forward and I'm interested in the interview, but I'm also having somewhere to put my hands if I'm getting a little fidgety. I also have my hand on top of it, so if I need to do a little bit of squeezing or pressure to be able to relieve some of that energy while you sit and wait for the next question, you can do that. It also makes it so that if you noticed, I write with my left hand, my pen is in my left hand, and that makes it possible for me to quickly write some notes and then come back and maybe position it like this, in which point you now have your fingers on the back of the pen. You can use that to create a little bit of pressure, again, especially if you're extremely uncomfortable in that moment because public speaking is a challenge for you. This is one of those things where you can, again, redistribute your energy, be able to pay attention, still be interested, but not be distracting. The second step to this is if you don't have anywhere to put your elbows because you're in a chair that doesn't have arms, another option is to do the dinner table placement where you put your forearms on the table. You still have your pen in your hand, you lean forward, and now your pen's out in front of you, and you're still listening, and you can get those questions answered, but you still have somewhere to put your hands that isn't, again, distracting or feeling like you're not anchored. Now, you might be wondering, how come I can't just put my hands in my lap? A lot of people I work with, they try this technique, and it actually creates a lot more distress. It's unnatural. It's not normally how we typically sit. And so to be able to give your hands something to do, to be able to stabilize yourself so that you have a nice squared away position, but that it's a confident position. For those of you who struggle to maybe bring it all forward, this kind of puts you in a position to where you can do that without necessarily receding back into your chair. Okay. Now, what if you don't have a pen or you're not a big writer in your interviews? I'm one of those people. I like to watch what people are saying and hear them. I retain information better. And at the very end, I might make some quick reminder notes, but I won't do it throughout the course of the interview. I recommend having something smaller than this, but this is a good example, that I can palm. Okay. So if I can palm it in my opposite hand that I don't write with, so this is my writing hand, this is not my writing hand, I palm it, and then I do the same thing. I wrap my hand, thumb on the back of my palm, and over the top of my hand, so that, again, I still have my anchors left and right on the chair, I may have my anchors up front on the table if there isn't one. But that these 2 points are made, and then I go down to my hips. They're about halfway in my seat, and if you'll notice, I kind of have some space, sorry for the shaking table, behind my back to be able to keep me up and present and engaged in the conversation. This allows me to, create some pressure point on the back if I'm a little nervous or I'm trying to figure it out, and I need somewhere for that to go, but I don't want it to be disruptive. And the last point I would make is, say like you've forgotten both of those things. Same hand position, except for you're going to put your thumb in the back of your palm, and you're going to clasp the top of your hand, and you're going to anchor your elbows either at your chair or at the table. Make sure that your seat is about halfway through on the seat that you're sitting on, and then your toes are anchored to the floor, particularly the balls of your feet, so that you're leaning forward, okay? The hand that goes on top is the hand that you use for writing or directing if you like to talk with your hands. And then it goes right back into the holding position so that you're paying attention, you're alert, but you have somewhere to put that energy. So that is basically what sums up my recommendations and tips for managing your nerves when it comes to where you put your hands and your energy if you're really fidgety in your interview. One final tip, I would say, actually, the bonus tip would be dealing with the nervousness that might happen in the moment that has to do with a 5-count rule. Some of you might have heard of a 5-point anchor process where they tell me 5 things in the room that you see, that you feel, that you smell, that you can touch, that you can hear. That takes a lot of energy for you to work through. And so my recommendation in those scenarios when you're being interviewed is actually just do a 5-count breath. Inhale and exhale, just like I did right there, which is hard to see as long as we're thinking about what our facial expression is making. That allows us to slow our heart rate and pay attention. A great time to do that breath is maybe right after you have made your statement, or maybe right before you get ready to answer a question that they have asked you. And then, of course, anytime during the transition process for you to maintain your composure and be able to stay focused. So that's it for today. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a message. I look forward to seeing you on the next video.